Good morning and welcome to TVP World, coming to you live from Warsaw this Sunday morning. My name is Oleksiy Goncharenko and these are the latest updates in the world news. Such killings will continue, says Oleksiy Goncharenko from Ukraine's European Solidarity Party in response to the assassination of a former Speaker of Parliament, Andriy Parubiy. A leading figure in Ukraine's pro-European protest movements, Parubiy had also previously served as Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council. He was shot and killed in Lviv on Saturday.
Definitely. Today was a black day for the whole Ukraine, but also for our secret service and for our law enforcement bodies. I know that they prevented a lot of such attacks, and that was an amazing job done. Even the fact that I'm giving an interview to you proves that they are effective, because Russians twice tried to kill me and one to kidnap, and it was prevented by our secret service. But this time they failed. And that is a very serious thing. And Parubiy was a former Speaker of the Parliament, which is position number 2 in Ukraine, in the state, after president, and he was so brutally killed just in the middle of the city. So it's a black day for Ukrainian security services. And definitely they need to make lessons from this. In other case, such killings will continue.
For the first time, Europe's foreign ministers discussed what to do with billions of euro worth of frozen Russian assets, money that could help rebuild Ukraine. But after hours of tough debate in the Danish capital, the deadlock is unbroken, and Kyiv is still empty-handed.
What to do with 210 billion euros worth of frozen Russian assets that could be mobilized to support Ukraine on the front lines, as well as its reconstruction. Now, this was the guiding question underpinning an informal ministerial meeting in the Danish capital on Saturday, attended by foreign ministers from across the 27 EU member states. Now, while there were no clear answers to this question, it's important to highlight this is the first time that the matter of the frozen Russian assets have been discussed at this level. Now, Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski is a known proponent of confiscating these assets, giving them to Ukraine, as well as that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to help him repel Russian aggression. He also told a PAP reporter that he is behind burden sharing. This is so that Belgium would not be the only country exposed to litigation if the Kremlin wants to take this a step further in the courts. TVP World asked the EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, whether this proposal of burden sharing of other member states sharing the legal risks, whether this had gained pace at this meeting as a viable option. This is what she said at a press conference in response.
The member states were voicing that, of course, we are in solidarity with Belgium, so they are not left alone with the risks. So let's work on mitigation of those risks.
Now, the EU's 19th sanctions package against Russia was also discussed at length. We got an update from Kaja Kallas herself, in which she stated the proposed contours of this package, which would include secondary sanctions, tariffs slapped on Russian goods entering the EU marketplace, as well as more targeted efforts against those Russian shadow fleet vessels, which are circumventing EU surveillance, bringing in energy profits to the Kremlin, which prop up Russia's war machine. Now, Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen was particularly vocal about the need for tougher sanctions applied to Russia, but also from buy-in of international players, particularly the US.
We need to bring Ukraine in a position of strength, and therefore we need to increase pressure together through harder sanctions. And of course, transatlantic cooperation will make the effect of the sanctions even stronger.
So what is the timeline for these initiatives? Frozen Russian assets, we're a long way from getting those mobilized to support that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He has been calling for the confiscation of these assets since Russia's full-scale invasion of 2022. But as I said earlier, this is the first time it has been discussed at length, so a major step forward here, at least at that senior EU level. We also know that the 19th sanctions package is expected to get feedback from the capitals as early as next week. We're hearing from our sources within the EU diplomatic sphere that they're expecting this to be implemented soon. There is real impetus to support that Ukrainian president on the front lines, as well as at the negotiating table, as US President Donald Trump goes harder with those peacetime talks. But the big question here is whether all of these efforts from the EU will be enough to stop Russian President Vladimir Putin with his ongoing invasion of Ukraine. Angela Skujins from Copenhagen for TVP World.
Russian strikes hit an EU mission in Kyiv earlier this week, severely damaging the building. Mark Toth, U.S. national security and foreign policy analyst, told TVP World that the attack was highly likely intentional. He warned that if Brussels does not respond, Putin may feel he can act with impunity.
It's highly likely, a shame, and it's good for you to point that out. It's highly likely that it was intentional, but even if it wasn't, even if it was a stray missile that got away from them, nonetheless, they've not backed off of it. There's been no formal apologies for hitting the EU. So whether it was a messaging act by design or now a messaging, after the effect, if you will, that's what it's serving as. It's basically telling the EU, we're unaffected by you. I, as Putin, am going to continue to do our campaign against Ukraine, and anything that you do is not going to stop us. And I think if Europe doesn't send a strong message back, if there's not immediate consequences for those offices being hit, then Putin's going to believe that he can get away with more. And the next attack would be intentional. And they may start doing that not just in Kyiv, but potentially elsewhere in Europe.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is coming to Poland on Sunday to visit the country's border with Belarus. The visit's intention is to show, quote, full solidarity with EU nations protecting the bloc's eastern frontiers and emphasize the growing European defense industry. Von der Leyen will meet with Prime Minister Donald Tusk during her visit to the border with Belarus to inspect fortifications and monitoring systems. But Poland isn't the only country on her schedule. The tour started on Friday with von der Leyen going to Finland, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, and Sunday in Poland, all countries that share a border with Russia or Belarus. The, quote, frontline states tour came after Russia launched drones and ballistic missiles and rained fire on Ukrainian cities on Thursday night, killing more than 20 civilians in the attack on Kyiv, and with one strike hitting an EU delegation building. A spokesperson for the EU executive said this tour is to reassure EU frontline states of Europe's support against Russian aggression and bolster defense spending. Russian leader Vladimir Putin sees Germany as a major target in Europe, according to Sinan Selen, deputy head of Germany's Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution. Russian intelligence is reportedly recruiting more people with access to sensitive information in Germany. Selen says Russia is conducting, quote, extensive activities against Germany, including cyber attacks, disinformation, sabotage, illegal migrant smuggling, and attempts to influence politics. Moscow has scaled back embassy-based espionage but shifted to other operations. The federal office warns about recruitment attempts, including love traps and offers of money or status. Russian President Vladimir Putin flew to the northern Chinese city of Tianjin early on Sunday for a 4-day trip. The Russian leader will take part in the 2-day Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin, which is being hosted by his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. On Wednesday, he will attend a massive military parade in the Chinese capital to mark the surrender of Japan in World War II. According to China's state media, North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, will also be among 26 foreign heads of state and government at the event. The only European heads of state attending the parade, but not the summit, will be Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić and Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico. Anti-immigration protests are being held outside hotels across the United Kingdom. The temporary settlements of migrants in hotels have been at the top of public concerns for the British as they worry about individual security. The protests were sparked after an immigrant lodged at a hotel was charged with sexual assault. The temporary housing of immigrants in hotels is part of larger legal framework dealing with an excess of immigrants. This has placed the British government under increasing pressure, especially as counter-protests have emerged. The issue has been a major driving force for the far-right politicians, including the Reform UK polling as the most popular choice. Heavy rains caused major disruptions in Slovenia. The flooding resulted in some rail services to be suspended, among others.
Replacement transport had to be organized for the passengers of the cancelled rail connection. Severe rains that mainly affected the coastal region of Slovenia also caused local flooding of roads and buildings. At least one landslide was also reported.
Summer in Poland is coming to an end. Visitors and locals have mixed feelings about the season as they begin to brace for autumn.
The days are getting shorter and summer is coming to a close. While overall the temperature has been increasing in Poland in recent years, people say this summer seems different.
This summer is a cold summer, but generally I love Poland.
Others choose to focus on the upsides of the season, seeing it as a time to make new memories.
I do like the Polish summer again because there's just so many activities, there's so much more to do in the city. I do love it here in the winter as well with the Christmas markets, but there's just a certain magic in the summer.
Polish summer compared to Swedish summer seems to be less rain in general and a little bit more warm and sun. We have sun for approximate, let's say altogether the whole summer, 3 weeks, and then it rains and it kind of get cold in between, but you at least have a steady flow of heat, and that's what I love about Poland and Polish summer.
In addition to the lower temperatures, the Vistula reached its lowest level in Warsaw this month. For many, it's a worrying sign of ongoing drought.
A drought is a long-term process, both when it begins and when it ends. Firstly, there are many causes, ranging from meteorological and climatic to human-created.
Others say mindset makes the final difference.
Not hot enough, there's not enough rain, but in the end, the summer has been a very good, joyful one. Life has taught me there is no such thing as bad weather, there's only good or great weather, just bad clothes.
Compared to 2024, the temperatures in the summer of 2025 in Poland have been trailing slightly behind so far. The ongoing drought might continue into the future, drying up water supplies and making for arid conditions.
And a flock of colorful hot air balloons adorn the sky over Paraguay as the South American country is hosting its first ever World Championship. More than 30 pilots from around 20 countries took to the skies on Thursday morning amid good wind conditions in Paraguay's southwestern city of Iguazu. The lineup of contenders features Japan's Mamoru Endo, Australian Peter Dutneil, and Brazil's Warley Macedo. The championship will draw to a close on Sunday. And with those images, it's a wrap for this edition of the World News. But do stay tuned to TVP World as there's much more coming up here for you this morning.